Hi all, welcome to today's topic which we would be dealing with references. Now references is a very important topic with respect to any programming language. You have something called as pointers in C, you've got in any programming languages, references is one of the most important and the most efficient way of coding any language. Now when you come to references, what exactly does a reference mean? Right? So we know, let's consider what is the basic difference here between a reference and a variable. Now a variable basically actually contains the value, right? So variable is nothing but the value is contained in the variable. Now here lies the difference for a reference. A reference is just a pointer to the value. It does not contain the value, but it is just a pointer to the value. Now you must be having a question at this point, right? Then why at all do we use references, right? What is the advantages of basically using a reference? So the basic advantage of using a reference is you don't have to pass the whole value. Now you may have big values, arrays, big hashes, right? You don't have to pass whole values when you're actually calling in functions or anything of that sort, right? So it's pretty simple. You're just passing a reference and working on the reference, right? And you can also easily modify the value. It is dynamic. So once you modify the reference, the actual value which is contained in the variable is also a modifier. So at any point, the basic use of references is it is pretty simple just to pass a reference rather than the whole value at any point of time, right? So let's see how referencing is actually done in Perl. Now the operator that you see here, the slash operator, which is the backslash operator that you see here, is basically an operator that is used to perform references. Now references can be done at the scalar level, it can be done at the array level, it can be done at the hash level. Since there are only three variables in Perl, it can be done at three levels, that is the scalar level, array level, and hash level. So let's look at how scalar references work, right? So let me give an example here, right? Let me write a simple code. Specifying the path of the Perl interpreter. I'm defining a variable, let's say x is equal to 10. And now if I want to reference this variable, I would say y is equal to $x. So here we've defined a variable $x is equal to 10. So the variable x contains the value 10. And here the value y is basically just a reference to x. So let's see what happens. So basically y will just basically contain the address of the variable, right? So when I do a print of $y, let's see what gets printed out. You will basically get saying, since it's a pointer to a scalar variable, right? Since it's holding on one variable, so it will say scalar of the address, right? So let me repeat that again. So $y is actually a reference to a scalar variable, and it is just basically a reference. So it just contains the address of the variable and not the value. So let me print $y and let's see what happens. It will be more clear for you. Okay, I missed the semicolon here, so that's the reason why we got a compilation error. Right now it should be good. So there it is. So basically the value of y that is printing, it is stating that it is actually pointing to a scalar variable, and this is the address, right? So this basically indicates a scalar variable. But in real-time scenarios, we hardly use a reference to a scalar. We use references to an array or a reference to a hash. So let's see how a reference to a hash works, as well as references to an array, right? So let me see the next topic, right? So before I come to array referencing, let's see how you can access. Now you need to access the value through a reference, right? Through the referenced value. Here, as you're seeing, $y is only containing the address. But what if you want the value through the reference, right? You would do simple, right? So print the value. The value is, you would put for a scalar, you would precede it by a $y. This would basically extract the value and print the value, right? If you look at it, so there'll be two print statements. One is the address, which when you are printing just $y. But if you want the actual value of the variable $10, you need to precede it by a dollar for scalar only, right? So there you see, the value is 10. You got the value as 10, and pretty much it works as expected, right? So let's go to the next topic. So the next topic is array reference, right? So it's pretty similar. Even an array reference it's pretty much the same. You would be using the same operator for an array reference. So first let's define an array and see how it works, right? I'm defining an array. Just a few statements. So I've defined an array. So let me remove all this. Now since we've done a scalar, we'll do an array, right? We'll do an array reference. And set. So remember, any reference can be held only in a scalar, whether it's an array, whether this is a hash or a scalar. All references can be stored in a scalar variable. Remember this statement very well. Any reference of whether it is an array, whether it is a hash, whether it is a scalar, can only be stored in a scalar variable, right? So now I'm using the same operator to basically reference it to an array and just say y. Now let's say print $z. It would just print saying it's pointing to an array and the address. So let's run this. There you see. Previously it was pointing to a scalar, but now since we have defined it as an array, it will point to an array and giving the address of the value, right? Now similarly, you want to print the actual values, right? So previously we were preceding it by dollar, but now since this is an array, we would say simply at $z, right? If you put at $z, it will actually get the value of the array, right? So let's run this command now. You look at it, the whole array value has been provided here. All the elements of the array are printed out, which is pretty much working as expected, right? So that completes an array reference. Now we need to understand what is the terminology of anonymous array reference. So let's look into that. Anonymous, right? Now what do we mean by anonymous? As you hear the word anonymous, what does it mean, right? It is nameless. That means you're trying to define an array which actually does not have any name. Now how do you do that, right? This is also done with the help of referencing concept. So remember, Any reference, as I'm doing, it always starts with a dollar, right? And anonymous, here we have not defined any array name. Previously I defined an array. If you look at it, I defined an array saying at y is equal to 1 2 3 4 5. But now I'm not naming an array, I'm directly defining an array through a reference, right? So let me define that. So I'm providing the reference $x is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you look at it, I have used this to signify it as an array, right? And then, right, semicolon. Now let's see if I do a print of $x. Let's see what prints out. It should say an array. It is a reference to an array. Right? Print $x. Okay. Let's see. So there it is. You can see it's actually pointing to an array, right? It is an anonymous array. Now let's see to simply again print the value as well. It is pretty much the same. The only thing is you have not named the array here, and that is one of the very good uses of references, where you can just point to an anonymous array as well, right? So I would just print out the values at $x, right? I'll get all the values printed out here again. So there you go. You get the values as well, right? Here it is. All the array values are printed out, right? So basically this code, first thing printed out the reference, which was a reference to an array. Next we wanted to dereference, right? Dereferencing is nothing but extracting the exact value, because sometimes you would need the exact value from the reference variable. So I would use this option for an array. So this completes the topic on anonymous array references, right? Let's look at the next topic. Hash references, right? So let's look at the next topic, which is a hash reference. So let's define a hash now, right? So %x is equal to, the best way of defining a hash is equal to greater than key values, right? So 1 to 3, 1 shall 1, 2 equal to greater than shall 2, 3 equal to greater than shall 3. So let me remove them. Right. So this is basically, we do have a name for the hash, which is x here, right? And let's remove these brackets now, since it's a named hash. So here, what do we see clearly, right? So we have 3 key values. 1 is the key, 2 is the key, 3 is the key, and the values associated with them. Now let me refer to this hash. As I indicated previously, any reference to an array, variable, or hash is a scalar. So I put $y is equal to the operator, the reference operator, and just say that %x. And now if you print $y, it would say it's a reference to a hash now. So let's print this out. There you go. So now you clearly see, it clearly mentions it's a reference to a hash at this point, right? Now similarly, I want to get the values of the hash, right? So let's see how I can get the values of a hash. You would just precede it by a, since this is a hash, just proceed by a percentage symbol. It will retrieve all the values in the hash. So let's print this out now. So I'm sorry, this was actually not the way. Let me, I think I put it wrong syntax, sorry. We need to get the values through key value pairs. So that's not the way. So for hashes, let me just extract the keys. So what you could do is, for each